A controversial badger cull is finally underway to try to stop the spread of tuberculosis in cattle. Up to 5,000 badgers will be shot during the 6-week pilot in Somerset and Gloucestershire. But protesters say there's not enough evidence to show it will work. Our correspondent John Kay is in West Somerset, where the cull got underway last night. John.
Yeah, Sophie, we don't know exactly where it started. Nobody, it seems, heard any gunfire, but somewhere out there in this vast area of West Somerset and in an area of West Gloucestershire, the first of what could be 5,000 badgers were shot overnight. You know, this is something that's been debated by politicians for years, argued about by scientists. It's divided members of rural communities, but we do know now it is underway. Dawn over Somerset. And with it came the news many farmers have been waiting for and that protesters have long dreaded. After years of debate, the culling of 5,000 badgers had finally started. Have you heard the news this morning?
No, I haven't. I've literally just woken up.
They have confirmed that it has begun, the cull has started.
Well, I'm actually very upset. I'm appalled.
Paula has come from Derbyshire to join this protest camp to fight against the cull.
It's barbaric. There's no scientific reason for it, so I've come down to show my support.
The government says there is evidence that the cull will reduce the spread of TB to cattle. The badgers will be shot at night by trained marksmen hired by local farmers. Ministers say at the moment there's no alternative.
You cannot get rid of bovine tuberculosis in cattle if you only address the disease in cattle. Until we can deploy our vaccines, which are years off, we cannot wait. We won't have a cattle industry, but also we'll have hideously diseased wildlife.
Farmers like James Small are relieved the cull has finally started. Bovine TB has cost the industry millions, and he's convinced his cattle caught the disease from badgers.
My cattle are born here on the farm and they stay here on the farm. I don't buy any other stock in. Yes, I went down with TB. Well, it didn't come from another cow, so it must be coming from another source.
As the shooting got underway last night, protesters turned out, and so did the police.
That's a badger set, isn't it?
That's a badger set.
Yeah.
These campaigners were looking for signs of the cull, but with a vast area to search, they didn't find any. The trial will be monitored by officials to see if it's humane, safe and effective. Opponents, though, doubt it can be any of those things.
We're going to see a lot of badgers killed, we're going to see a lot of badgers injured and suffering as a consequence for no real beneficial end.
The culls here in Somerset and in Gloucestershire will last for 6 weeks. Then a decision will be made about whether they should be extended. It's only, I think, when you see those aerial pictures and you see that vast area behind us here that you realise what a challenge it is potentially for those marksmen to try to shoot 70% of the badgers here, and what a challenge it's going to be for those protesters who say they want to get out there and disrupt things. Sophie.
John, thank you very much. So, will the cull work? A much larger 8-year trial carried out in the 1990s concluded that badger culling would slow down the spread of TB infection in cattle, but only slightly. And the scientist who instigated the study has told BBC News this latest pilot badger cull is a crazy scheme. Our science correspondent Palab Ghosh has the story.
The science behind the badger cull was established during the 1990s in an extensive 8-year trial. The researchers found that culling badgers could bring down TB rates slightly if more than 70% of badgers were killed. That would bring a 16% reduction averaged over 9 years. For years, scientists and politicians have thought that a mass cull was simply not worth it for such a relatively small reduction in TB rates. But the government has now given the go-ahead for culls in 2 pilot areas.
It's a crazy scheme. The government is embarking on a scheme that isn't backed up by scientific evidence. They spent between 20 and 30 million pounds finding out whether killing badgers is an effective way of controlling the disease in cattle, and the answer is it's not very effective. So why start on a scheme of killing badgers?
TB infection in cattle is increasing slowly but surely, particularly in southwest England. The number of cattle slaughtered in England in 2012 to control TB was 38,000. On average, the cost of a TB infection on a farm is £34,000. The government picks up the bulk of this cost, around £22,000, leaving the farmer to pick up the rest, £12,000. DEFRA estimates that it will cost farmers and the government a total of £1 billion over the next decade if no further action is taken.
This is a very carefully thought out policy that is being tested in these two pilots to give a glimmer of hope to those desperate farming families who are seeing cattle slaughtered.
There is no problem with TB in cattle in Scotland, and the Welsh and Northern Ireland assemblies have gone for a policy of vaccinating badgers against TB. Palab Ghosh, BBC News.